Hello, everyone. This is the NLP today for November, and I'm going to do a couple a month, I think, and start doing something every Wednesday if possible. So my goal too is to do some more live interviews, but I'll do them on NLP today like this, and other people can be in the call and then upload those. But today we're going to talk a little bit about different aspect of inner dialogue and becoming the kind of person you want to be based on, of course, because I have a class coming up on, um, waking hypnosis, right? Ericksonian waking, whatever you want to call it, um, and why it works so well. And so what you have to begin to think about is, I did an interview yesterday or Tuesday, where we were talking about inner dialogue and inner, what's the word I want? Inner encouragement, inner helping, rewire that part of your brain. Because what really gets us going, what our personalities formed on a lot of things, it develops over a lifetime and keeps changing. But it starts, of course, with, with your self-talk, right? When you're a little kid, your self-talk begins to get developed by the talk around you, by the parents, the authority figures, media, all the things bringing stuff into your head, which is good. But it's also very important for us to begin to realize that, if we want to change our personality, we want to get good at things, we have to change our inner dialogue, right? And here's an example. This ties into waking hypnosis, right? Which is, and it's a covert hack that intelligence agents use, from what I understand, to, they use the behavior profiling, if everybody has access to that. I think where, we talk about, are you strength driven? Are you a membership kind of person? Do you have self-pity? Is significance important to you? Well, first they do that and they feed their conversation based on that, right? What really drives you? None of this Maslow's hierarchy of needs or even the DISC model, right? That's one level. This is like what really gets in your head and drives you. Because an example could be if you're strength driven or significance, those are pretty closely related. We know that you want to get, you want to appear strong, you want to appear significant, great. So then your biggest fear is to make you appear insignificant or not very strong, right? And every conversation that you have is hypnotic in nature. You're either putting someone in trance or you're being put in trance. That's it. Every conversation, because that's just the way your brain works. Everyone's heard me complain so much about these people that teach Ericksonian, and they make it complicated with all these rules and all this other stuff. But when you really, and I've sat in on a few of them, it's like, well, you realize that I think you're confusing putting someone in a trance with boring the shit out of them. Right? That's just the way it's like, oh, and people go, isn't that brilliant, right? Or, someone that took my classes and then actually went and trained with one of the founders. It said it was kind of interesting because, the guy taught some pretty good things, but he couldn't really explain it. And he goes, I left there thinking his general impression was, if I'm confused, it means I don't really understand what he's doing because he's so brilliant. And he goes, because he went through my training, I'll pat myself on the back and not dislocate my arm. He goes, I'm sitting there going, no, I'm confused because you don't know how to communicate. you know, and you know, one of the big flaws in the old traditional, and I hear Ericksonian people do it, is when someone says, I don't understand, or this isn't sinking in, I don't know if this will work, and they'll do this, your subconscious does. And you got to do it with the hypnotic, your subconscious does. And it'll manifest later. Usually after they're off, you know, if it's a paid course, after the 3 days where you don't get your money back. it's like, you know, it's like when the guys that used to do a lot of the stop smoking, and I did them, they always say money back guarantee. And they always had the asterisk until the break. Right. And so, and I think that's just the way that it is. So if you just realize every communication is hypnotic in nature, that you're either being put into trance or you're putting someone into trance. Why? But do you have, what's the word I want? Do you have where you want them to go? So today, what I wanted to talk about, now you know what? I think I could share my screen. And I'll show you. I'll walk you through something. It's a teaser that's in the upcoming course. Cool. All right. Can you see the screen? Overview, the power of pre-persuasion. Great. Here is the key where when people think about, well, every conversation is hypnotic in nature, you're being put in trance or you're putting someone in trance. Most of our conversation is pretty inert. We're just carrying on conversations, right? But if you want to, if you're using the communication for a specific purpose, and I don't just mean therapy, just in general, where do you want to take the person? But you have to step back and realize that it's very important at the outset to set up pre-persuasion, right? Persuasion. Cialdini, who wrote the book Persuasion, in whatever that book, great book, still good. The only, you know, and he had all the rules of persuasion. The only one that doesn't really work anymore is reciprocity for a lot of people. A lot of people have no reciprocity. That's a different story. But you have to set the stage before the persuasion begins. So what are you setting up? Not only do you have a goal, what are you setting up? What is it that you want, right? And so, because you have to capture the subconscious attention before logic can resist, right? And the best example of this is the commercials. When you watch a commercial, right? On television, or you see them on the web too, but especially the old days of television, you know, what's the first thing that gets flashed, right? Because they're trying to influence you, right? You know, I remember one commercial, the thing would flash and it was red and it had like lightning bolts and all that shit. It was like, headache pain, headache pain, headache pain, right? Well, you know, just statistically, if 1 million people are watching that commercial, I don't know what the statistics would be. Probably 10% of the people have a headache, right? So it's, you know, so the pre-persuasion, the real power of it is if you can kind of front load the attention to where you want them to go, right? And again, on a mass scale, like you see in advertising, they're front loading the attention and screening out people that, you know, if you don't have a headache, you're feeling fine, you may not watch it, right? But again, how many people are susceptible to that command of headache pain, headache pain, headache pain? You remember that throbbing things in your temples or whatever they describe, right? So it's front load attention, right? The good communicators do it. I was watching a politician. I don't remember which one, but they try to front load your attention all the time, you know, usually on a problem they create, but then they're going to have the solution for the problem they create. But they'll bring up whatever it is, right? And that's the process, right? And that's what you want to do. So what do we mean by front load attention, right? There's 6 natural stimuli, according to Cialdini and a few other people. But number 1 is attractiveness, right? Men and women both are attracted to attractive men and women, regardless of race, everything else, right? But if something's attractive, that's the term attract. There's the attraction in it, right? Another natural stimuli, though, on the opposite, is something that's threatening, right? Everyone here can remember it was only 5 years ago where we were all going to die of COVID. What did one of the people say? Look around. 10 to 20% of the people will, that will die of COVID. That's pretty threatening, right? And gets your attention, right? We're seeing it now in the political realm. It's fascinating, right? So you're attracted to things. You're attracted to things that are attractive. It's not that and you're sort of attracted to things that are threatening because that's how your brain works. It's like, well, if this is a threat, I need to get ready for it, right? Because 100,000 years ago, you had to search out, the enemy tribes or the lions, tigers, and bears that were going to kill you, right? And so then the other thing you can do that will front load attention is if it's novel. The iPhone 20. I don't have an iPhone 20, but if you had one, I don't even know if it's out yet, but it's like novel. People like things that are novel. Your brain will find things that are novel, right? And again, a good way to front load attention is called self-relevant. If it's important to you, you're going to focus on it, right? Good example this week in a very cold way is you go to a hypnosis conference or where there's a lot of coaches, hypnosis coaching conference. And all these people, there'll be 2 classes going on. One is on like communing with the angels, great. And the other is build a sustainable 6-figure practice, right? And you look in the rooms, the one with, communing with the angels will have 100 people. You look in the one building a sustainable 6-figure practice, we'll have 15. Right? And even though some of the people in the angel one will be going like, but I want to build a practice. Right? But your attention goes to what's really relevant to you. Right? So what's really relevant, right? And that's where if you look at people, if you want to build your social, I've been taking classes on building your social media, how to change your, Bruce would be proud, like your short videos, TikToks, Instagram, all that stuff, right? So it's taking these classes. And he talks about like, and you could use the same with his front load attention with what's the hook, right? Right. So what if you offered a class the next year, right, at this conference? I will show you how to commune with the angels and build a sustainable business. Right? So then you're going to get both people because now you know well what's really important to you, right? So what's self-relevant? So if you kind of know what's important to your target, that's relevant to them. I bet you wonder why we're here today. When things are left unfinished. Now, this is a Milton Erickson trick that he used to do all the time, which is he would start a story and never finish it. Because your brain wants closure. There's a reason why, I forget his name, but he's got like, I don't know, 10 shows on television. And they're all the cop kind of things, Law and Order, Blue Bloods, all this other stuff, right? Not so much Blue Bloods, but Law and Order and that. And he goes, because he's going to what's attractive to some people or relevant is they like a story to start, go through the meat of the story, but they like a completion. right? And if you think about shows like Law and Order and all, because if you've ever been around criminal justice, they go from here's the murderer to the guilty plea in 6 weeks, right? If you ever been around it or had family member, criminal cases can take years or months generally, right? But we like things to be finished, right? Because unfinished stuff drives us crazy. But we can use this if you want to be a waking hypnosis expert, is you never finish everything that you're doing. Next week, you just leave a teaser. I like reteaching this because it's like, I got to do that more, And again, we like things that are mysterious, that we can't explain. Right? And again, to use our NLP kind of approach to it, anchoring, the first your first impression biases all your judgments after that. Your first impression can be the most powerful. Remember, I was at God, this goes back couple of decades. I was at a seminar on building websites back when I was doing that for myself, right? And I mentioned, you're in a class, nobody knows you, you don't know anybody, and everybody's introducing themselves, and I meet the people putting it on, and they say, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm an NLP person, da, 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 da. And they're like, oh, cool. So I gave them the website I had, and they looked at some stuff. And I remember, it's how important first impressions is. They come up and they go, so you were a student of Stephen G. Jones? And I went, nope. In fact, he took my classes, right? And they go, well, we watched a couple of your videos. They're just like his. And I don't hide the fact he took my videos, duplicated them. He got the transcripts and basically redid the transcripts into a camera, right? But the first impression, those guys, I still think they think I'm lying, right? Even if I sent them the copy of here's the copy of his what do you call it, graduation from my classes. Okay, right? But it's that first impression. So what's the first impression you want to anchor in the person's mind? Right? Person I know that's kind of fun. She'll always, Erica, what's her last name? She's from Washington State. I can think. Flint, yeah. The dancing lady, right? But she says, like, this first impression when she's talking to a client, she always says, whatever their problem is, I've got this. Kind of like, and I ask her, I go, where'd you learn that? Was it, because I know it from what we do. And she goes, no. I always think that's what you want your doctor to say. I got this. I can handle this. Done it hundreds of times. Or would you want your doctor to say, I don't know. I've never done this one. Bruce, this will be I'm pretty sure I can do a quadruple bypass, but trust me. Or do you want the doctor like Alec Baldwin in, you want God? He was in operating room number 3. I mean, so it's first impression. So what do you want your first impression to be? And this one I do try to practice. I'm usually kind of real casual, but no one here remembers. But when I used to run around conferences, always had the nice suit, the Armani kind of suit, and all that. Usually with gym shoes, but that was the first impression.
Red shoes.
Red shoes, or I would always run around with, because some people say, like, I remember Elson saying in the 90s, look, you're all dressed up. Why are you wearing gym shoes? I said, well, there was a study done. I think it was the Kellogg School of Business, whatever. It was a big business school. And they got the graduates of the business program. And they said, when you were in undergraduate and all that, what was your favorite teacher or graduate? And they all, they had, it's all over the board, as you could imagine. But when they look for the one that had the most, they would ask, well, what was it about Susan that you liked? And they go, well, she always had on red Converse sneakers. Right? And this is a business school. So 20 years later, and these are people who are bank presidents and millionaires, investment guys. Why did they remember that? Right? It was the first impression. You know, all the business instructors were dressed up or had their, probably back those days, corduroy coat with the leather elbow pads and all that stuff, right? But so anyway, what's your first impression? What do you want your clients to think, right? Also, too, priming is is very important when you're going to do this. The subtle cues that shape perception, you know. You want to have fun with that, right? So then you want to implement things, right? Find commonality with the person, as we would say in rapport. You know, you define the emphasis you want their brain to go to. Right? You guide their focus, right? And generally, when you're talking to them, you want to get in rapport with somebody and implement different changes. If you ask for their advice, it really speeds up trust and things like that. Whether you're going to do it or not, right? Never ask for an opinion, right? And I think Cialdini's actually says, you know, I don't want your opinion, William. I want your advice on this, right? It's very powerful. So anyway, here's my persuasion architecture, pre-persuasion especially, right? How do you set up what you're going to do, right? Even before you get to the fancy stuff. Grab their attention, right? Focus on the problem. Okay? I don't want to just say rub salt in the wound, but as a mentor of mine said, you set them on fire, then you offer the solution of a fire extinguisher. Okay? If David is not on fire, he doesn't want to buy a fire extinguisher. If I set him on fire physically or mentally or emotionally, his focus will be on the problem, right? And then you do the Eric, so this is where the hypnotic stuff comes in. You hold their attention with a story. Your brain is set up to learn by stories, not facts, not logic, not anything else. Right? And all during the story, you want to make connections with where you want them to go. Right? Where if you're telling the story, where's the hero of the story? Where do they go? The protagonist, where do you want them to go? And it's where you want your client to go. Then you're making those connections, right? And so you pose a mystery, and you kind of circle the explanation, but it has to be resolved in your story, and you draw the moral of the story, right? Or you let your client, but you can, or the target, I use target, tell you what the moral of the story is. And then you can use what they think the moral of the story is, right? And again, there's only so many stories, you know? Harry Potter follows Star Wars, follows Twilight. It's all the same story, right? Follow Shakespeare, for God's sakes, right? There's people worry about, oh, they got to come up with an original story. No, take a story that's popular and just rechange it, you know? So again, you focus, right? So this is like hyper segmentation for that, right? It's micro target to build resonance with people that you're talking to. For years, and I did it too, like everybody, you and people still teach it, create the ideal client avatar, right? Which can be okay, but what if you go one step beyond that, right? And you really get into the micro targeting, right? Again, things like this, you know, the research says a low entry, but there still has to be an entry barrier, gets more results than just giving it away. right? There's a reason why you see all these people, offering $27, $37, 36. You see me do that a lot, right? What does Richard Nongard do? $59, right? Or if they, if you just give it away, I think that we still have the unconscious bias that you get what you pay for, and if it's free, right? Some of us have that bias where I don't know about anybody else, but I will ask, even though you may have fallen for it. I will admit I have in a way. Somebody's going to show you how to build $100,000 a month coaching business for $97. And I think it was Mark Cuban. They were talking to him about something. This kind of came up, and he goes, "Well, if I saw that, the first thing I'm thinking, this must be a horrible businessman. Because if I have something that can make $100,000 a month, I'm not giving it away for $97, right?" And then there's things they do about, oh, I've made so much, I'm trying to give it away, things like that. Which also too, another person they were talking about, and they said that, and they go, I don't know. I've never met a really wealthy person that usually doesn't want more. Right? Until the very end, then when they're cashing out, they'll do things, right? Right. But so it's things like like alcohol moderation campaigns where they bring up the pain of what drinking does. I'm seeing those a lot, right? We see it in the personal development phase, your world, becoming the person you always want to be, and then you get into the micro niches. These point that out, right? So the alcohol moderation, I'm seeing it because I still track it. Bruce points it out to me every once in a while. It's like entrepreneurs that drink too much. C-suite, corporate executives that drink too much. That's micro niche, but it works, right? Because if I'm a executive vice president of sales at a Fortune 500 company, I'm not going to be interested in anything that doesn't appeal to me, that doesn't resonate with me. We see it in the spirituality thing. I don't know, lately, I got to rethink how I do, or if I'm not doing it, but weight loss, because of all this Wegovy and all the drug shit driving me crazy. But again, that was a micro niche of just do this shot and you can lose all this weight. You don't have to change your diet. You don't have to start exercising, and it's a great niche because people are lazy, right? So, but you want to look at, like, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, TikTok, like Miss Michelle, she's on TikTok a lot, right? So you see that. When you see a person pitching something, especially consistently, how are they doing it and what are they doing, right? So it's kind of fun, right? So today's thing would be, persuasion is sequence and state. And this is before you get into the fancy stuff, the language patterns, the personal trance words, the magic words, all this other stuff. First, you have to grab and focus their attention, right? In whatever way you can do, right? And then if you give them something that can transform them, not just inform them, right? People want to be transformed. They don't want to be informed. And this is true. My example of this, and a few people here have been to these hypnosis conferences, the classes you remember weren't the ones that informed you the most. They were the ones that impacted you and transformed you. Maybe opened up a new idea, maybe gave you a different viewpoint. Right? Just like if you went to college and you were in college, when you think of the classes that you remember the most, they were the transformative type, not just the informative. I don't remember any of my graduate level statistics classes. I had 9 hours of graduate level. But I remember the classes where they got into the inner child stuff and about healing the child within, back when that was first popular. So, and all that other stuff. So that's kind of, you know, an insight to what I plan on doing, right? So in the upcoming class, but it's just kind of fun stuff. So again, this is NLP Today. If you have questions, just reach out, direct message me wherever you're watching this. As always, if you like this, click like and subscribe wherever you're seeing this if you want more information. And reach out if you have any questions. And again, coming up soon, November 12th is the first day of the Waking Hypnosis Master Level, Street-Smart Waking Hypnosis Master Level NLP class, which is going to be a lot of fun. And if you have any questions, just reach out.